Galloway addresses the male loneliness crisis. Fascinating.
There is a crisis facing boys and young men in this country. And my next guest, author and podcaster Scott Galloway, says it affects everything from their ability to form friendships, go out on dates, find jobs, find purpose in their lives.
Anyone else
Scott's
think
the host of the Prof G Pod.
The male loneliness crisis rhetoric has kind of gone away? I think it went away after the election because it's really, really, really difficult to maintain an environment where sympathy is being offered to people who are associated with the incel crowd, when the incel crowd is unambiguously the number one rep for every evil policy that is being fronted by this administration from young men in America. Like that demographic of people, this like lonely, socially awkward, very online guy, is now justifiably an avatar for all of the worst policies of the administration. It's just difficult to stay sympathetic, right?
Co-hosts the Pivot and Raging Moderates podcast. He's a best-selling author, and his latest book is Notes on Being a Man. And Scott joins me now. I want to read to you. You write in this book, algorithmically generated content on social media contributes to and profits from young men's growing social isolation, boredom, and ignorance, with the deepest pocketed firms on the planet trying to convince young men that they can have a reasonable facsimile of life on a screen. Many grow up without acquiring the skills to build social capital or create wealth. The statistics are insane. Like 45% of men 18 to 25 have never approached a woman in person.
Never asked a woman out in person.
That's fucking crazy. That's insane. I don't know if I've heard that one before. Sheesh.
And then what they're up against, think about it. You could largely describe America right now as a giant bet on AI. 10 companies have driven all the growth in GDP, are responsible for 77% of the earnings growth. Our economy literally rests on 10 companies now, often referred to as the Magnificent 10. And they do several things, but quite frankly, they're in the business.
Galloway has his issues, but his messaging is really good. Yeah, the main thing I remember about him is that he advocated for Bloomberg back in 2020. So not really going to, hang my hat on the hook of his political instincts, but if he's talking about these issues broadly.
Enragement, polarization, and then sequestering young people from all other activities.
And that's only getting worse given where AI is going. I mean, with agents and chatbots who are, sexually clad anime type figures chatting with young men.
Well, it starts pretty innocent.
Really demonstrating a high level of understanding of the issue. In that he's not technically wrong, but the way he's talking about it shows he can only begin to fathom.
And when you use AI, have you noticed the prompts that are almost irresistible at the end? Let me put this in a series of tweets. Right. Before you know it, you're 3 hours deep. But effectively, these companies have attached the entire economy and literally trillions of dollars to trying to get people to, or trying to convince young people, specifically young men who are more susceptible, because quite frankly, their prefrontal cortices isn't as developed, to try and convince them they can have a reasonable facsimile of life online. Why go through the hierarchy of trying to make friends? It's not easy, right? Why try to figure out how to navigate a corporate, all this, when you can go on Reddit or Discord and find friends, or you can trade crypto or stocks on Robinhood or Coinbase? And why, Anderson, would you go through the rejection, the
I've always said that this is one of the big drivers in the modern popularity of the incest genre of pornography, with fake incest, but you know what I mean. Whereas it is the fetishization of the kind of relationship that you have by default without having to ever make an effort to know other people. Like if you have it's the idea of going out and meeting new people is terrifying, is very, very scary. So what if, instead you fetishize a relationship that basically just comes for free, by virtue of being born, which is a family relationship, Yeah, and we know it all comes from the Japan. It's the insidious Japanese influence, and their incel problem's even worse than ours.
Well, the effort, the expense, the humiliation, developing a kindness practice of trying to establish a romantic partnership when you have literally lifelike synthetic porn. So what are we doing? I think our economy is attached to one objective, and that is to evolve a new species of asocial, asexual males. Unintentionally, we have an economic interest right now, I would argue, in planning our own extinction.
So what do you do? Because this juggernaut is not about to slow down anytime soon, the AI juggernaut.
I think there's a variety of things you can do. Starting very young, I think you need to redshirt boys.
You have boys. I have two boys. It's terrifying when you look at these stats.
I think a couple things. Education. We need to redshirt young boys. They're just less mature. And you're going to see as you get older, my 15-year-old has a party. The boys are dopes. Some of the 15-year-old girls could be the junior senator from Pennsylvania.
I see that in 4-year-olds.
So red shirt, start kids in kindergarten at 6. Get more men involved in K through 12 or 7.
Wait. What do you mean red shirt? What is that? What is that? He's saying red shirt, not register. What does he mean by that? Hold back a year? Have things gotten that dire? Is that what we're advocating for? Oh yeah, young men are stupid. There's no way of fixing this. So we're just going to like hold them back a year for school so that all the girls in their class are 1 year younger than them. No, I don't think so. This is the shit those incels over at the Korean Family Institute were advocating for a year ago.
80% are women who are naturally going to champion people who remind them of themselves.
So what is this naturally shit? Man, young men aren't stupid because of their fucking genetics or whatever. Young men are stupid because there are a bunch of social incentives for them to be stupid, and their brain is getting cooked by algorithms or whatever. It's not like an innate thing. Yeah, we're doing boys will be boys shit on young men.
Boys need more male role models. Immediately have a social zeitgeist where the moment a boy comes off the tracks, which is typically when he loses a male role model, at that point, he is more likely to be incarcerated than graduate from college, whereas girls in single-parent homes have the same outcomes. It ends up that boys, while being physically stronger, are emotionally and neurologically much weaker.
And I completely, unironic misandry, I completely reject this. I will 100% reject this. This is what no sociology does to a motherfucker. You see there are differences in patterns, and you're like, ah, yeah, it just must be how they are, you know? What about, like, the influences one might be subjected to that would lead to them acting differently, you know? What are we talking about here?
Yet also, I mean, at age 3 and 4, I see it already, girls have the vocabulary, or at least the desire, to talk about what they did in school, whereas boys, it's like pulling out teeth.
What are we doing? Are we being real? Do we unironically think that 4-year-old boys are? You're not even at puberty yet. There's no the hormone washes haven't even hit. What are you talking about? This is so low IQ. This is insane. How could you possibly make these ascriptions to 4-year-olds? A 4-year-old boy and girl are the same. I wouldn't even make these ascriptions to adults, but you're talking a four. They're just stupid little. They're just little fucking guys. What do you mean? They're the same. They're talking about child development. Young boys and young girls do not develop in such a way that young girls are linguistically competent before the young boys. That's complete. This is completely fake. This is made up. They're socialized to act differently. Young girls are socialized to be generally like more agreeable and more expressive, so they tend to express more. And young boys tend not to be, so they're not. He's selling a book, right? Yeah, of course.
The reality is our brain doesn't catch up until they're 25. Goes into college.
This just isn't true. I think you can make a reasonable argument that young women, like post-puberty, 13, 14, 15, whatever, girls, maybe mature slightly faster than guys due to the difference in the way the hormones affect there might be some average difference there. But if you're extrapolating this difference all the way back to 4 years old, we're not talking about science anymore. Now we're just being insane. So many normies think just like this. This is the reason why we're in this fucking problem, a lack of a sociological imagination. The reason young men are retarded is because of social forces, okay? It's not because of an innate feature of their da-da-da-da-da. People used to think the exact opposite about this, by the way, Like, young men in prep school were these, entrepreneurial little officers by 12 years old. Meanwhile, 12-year-old girls were like, and here's how you set a table. And everyone would be like, yeah, young men are just naturally more commanding understanding and capable of leading. Everyone wants to boil down the way people act to like, well, their brains just made them do that. But it robs them of the ability to understand how their behavior is contributing to the behavior of others. And it does hurt men, by the way. It's misandry. Yeah, it hurts everyone across the board, across the spectrum. But like, what lesson are you teaching here to young men? Oh, the reason you're like that is just because of your brain. Good luck. You're gonna change when you're 25. No, the fuck you won't. A young man who's like weird, reclusive, socially underdeveloped throughout his adolescence is not going to magically become competent socially at 25.
Any school, any college, in my view, that has over $1 billion endowment and isn't growing its freshman class faster than population growth should lose its tax-free status because it's not a public servant, it's a hedge fund with classes. And
there's a lot to get into with that one. I'm just going to ignore it.
My industry is so corrupt that we've decided the ultimate way to create artificial scarcity and extract more margin from middle-class homes is to limit our supply. Dartmouth sits on $8 billion endowment, lets in 1,100 people, which is what a good Starbucks serves in a weekend. There's no reason why they couldn't let in 11,000, quite frankly. More vocational programming, and quite frankly, put more money in their pockets. We've had tax and fiscal policies for the last 40 years that have made
I don't necessarily disagree with the substance of what he's saying here.
My generation, on average, 72% wealthier than we were 40 years ago, and people under the age of 40, 24% less wealthy. So what do you have? 60% of 30-year-olds used to have one child in the house 40 years ago. Now it's 27%. So we have they're up against technology, trying to separate them from their friends, make them less mammalia. We have fiscal policies, quite frankly, making them less wealthy. And then we have social media reminding them 210 times a day that they're failing. And what do you know? They wake up at 30, they're more obese, anxious, and depressed. And if we don't...
Hey, he's talking about you guys.
My generation has a debt. We'd recognize America from 1955 to 2000 garnered a third of the world's growth with 5% of the population. And then within that 5%, 30% of us who were born white heterosexual males got the majority of that prosperity. So there's a natural gag reflex when I start talking and advocating for young men.
I actually don't like this because I don't like the implication to it. There is a lot of generational inequality where a lot of wealth has been siphoned up by boomers and silent generation people, and even to an extent Gen Xers who are kind of hoarding it, and it's not like moving down the way that it used to, and there's a lot of negative consequences to that. But the problem with men behaviorally right now, young men, is not a lack of money. It's just not. There are a bunch of social forces at play here, but if you gave all of these like incelish, borderline neo-Nazi young men more money, that would not magically fix them. It's not necessarily like opportunity of in an economic sense. I think it's opportunity of access to social gatherings. The real problem is that we've structured a world in which nobody has to interact with anyone else, and it's tough to do so. Even if you want to go out there and be like a social butterfly, that doesn't mean other people are. A lot of people who might otherwise get along with you, are also up in their house. It's not necessarily something you can overcome on your own. The real problem is Nick Fuentes. Well, I mean, you joke, of course. Like, Nick Fuentes is popular because of people like this, right? Nick Fuentes could have existed back in like 1997. Happy birthday, Annie. 1997, and been like an unexceptional weirdo online, This particular brand of insult is just popular now, so there's a market for it. Part of it's a money problem, though, because access to social gatherings are monetized heavily. Yeah, but that's not a problem that you solve by giving everyone more money. That's a problem you solve by making society less hostile to socializing. But even then, it's not just like if you want to go out to a walk in a park with somebody, you can. That shit's still free. It's just I don't know. Yeah, I've read the Gooning article.
Men, but
by the way, it's not just men, really. It's young people. There have been studies that show women are more lonely than men. Yeah, but men are the problem. Sorry, I'm willing to call it on that just based on political behavior. Like, young men are going through it right now. Young women might also be like really lonely. But can you, again, imagine being a young woman trying to date guys right now? Holy shit, what a minefield, There's no equivalent to it. If you're a guy trying to date women, like maybe they're, I don't know, some of them are gold diggers or like mean or whatever. There's no equivalent to, yeah, fully half of my generation of young men are like giggling anti-empiricist lunatic neo-Nazis who have been radicalized by manosphere pedophiles online. It's insane. I don't think the young men are going to be like that forever. A bunch of young men voted for Mamdani, and I really think that's because a lot of these guys are just looking for direction, charisma, energy, and hope for the future, and Mamdani provided it. I don't think there's anything innate about this shift. But it is real, it is real.
The reality is, my advantage, my privilege, they should not have to pay the price for it. People in my generation have a debt when we need to get more emotionally involved in their lives. Men aren't stepping up. In this city, there are 3 times as many women applying to be big sisters as there are men applying to be big brothers. And then we have figured out, when I say we, my generation, how to vote ourselves more money. And we keep extracting more and more capital from young people to old. The prices of housing have gone absolutely crazy. The price of education has gone crazy because we've realized the way to get our houses more expensive is through a lack of permits, make it more difficult for people to get in college. And what do you know? The child tax credit gets stripped out of the infrastructure bill, but the $120 billion cost of living adjustment in Social Security flies right through. So they have less money, less opportunity. And we also have to acknowledge a basic reality. 75% of women say that economic viability is important in a mate. Only 25% of men state that. Beyonce could work at McDonald's and marry Jay-Z. The other way would not happen. So when you have the...
I don't know. I feel like this is shifting. I could be wrong. I don't know. I haven't dated every single woman on earth. I don't have like a broad spread. I think this is getting to be less true. I'm sure. Yeah, I don't know.
Well, men mate socioeconomically horizontally and down, women horizontally and up. And when the pool of horizontal and up, in other words, economically and emotionally viable...
See, okay, I think rhetoric like this contributes to the marginalization of young men. If young men are terrified of approaching women because they don't make a lot of money, like that contributes to their loneliness. Yeah, this is hoe math shit. I don't believe in this, man. And listen, again, I've said this so many times before. I'll keep repeating it over and over. If you're a guy and you don't have much in your bank account and you want to fucking hook up with a girl or you tell her she's cute or whatever the fuck, you can go and do that. And if she gives you shit for not having money, then just drop her ass. Now you know. Just drop her. Then she's not worth it. Just but now you know. You don't need to have the listen, if you have this like burning insecurity in your gut about a woman telling you you don't make enough for her, you need to, that's your fault. Work on that shit. Why the fuck do you have that, man? Why are you that weak? I'm being serious. Why are you so psychologically vulnerable that the idea of being shamed along those lines would eat away at you like that? Who cares? So somebody was mean to you, whatever. I don't know why, like, you're so vulnerable to that. Don't let yourself be.
Men keep shrinking. We have less household formation. And just to finish off this word salad, the cartoon of a woman in her 30s who doesn't find romantic love and what a tragedy she's living alone with her cats, that's not the tragedy. She's fine. Men need relationships much more than women. A widow is happier after her husband dies. A widower is less happy. Women in relationships live 2 to 4 years longer. Men in relationships 4 to 7 years longer.
There's an element of truth to it, but I hate how it's being pushed, okay? Men and women both need relationships exactly equally as much. There's nothing about either that innately makes people more or less desiring of social attention. The difference is that historically, a lot of marriages have been a pretty fucked up arrangement for the woman. Like, it was only relatively recently that divorces could be done, like, basically at will, that marital rape was illegal. Like, historically, women have not gotten the better end of the deal from marriage. The logic was always that, like, the men provide the money and the women, deal with everything that comes after because they need the money. Like, the financial reliance is the element that's the glue that holds it together. And that's why marriage is less common these days, because women have more money on average. But so as a consequence of that, like, widowers tend to die earlier after their wife dies, but widows tend to live longer after their husband dies because they no longer have to deal with that shit. But if a guy's wife dies, he ends up eating like cereal for breakfast every day for the rest of his life, or bread sandwiches or whatever the fuck. The point that I'm getting at here is that, like, this is a consequence of historically how marriages have panned out between men and women, not an innate biologically essential feature of the way men and women are different. You got to be careful with that. Again, it's the essentialism, man. It always comes down to the fucking essentialism. How do you view the stats about lesbian marriages having the highest rates of divorce and gay men having the lowest? I don't know, because there are so many bullshit stats. It's like that one lesbian stat. So the stat with the lesbian one was that lesbians have the highest rate of domestic abuse. You know where that stat's from? It turns out the methodology they used was they asked lesbians if they have been abused in any relationship in the past 10 years. And it turns out what actually happened was a bunch of those lesbians were abused by men in their relationship with a man and then left to be with a woman. The stat about lesbians all being like more violent than straight men, totally made up. But people have believed it for decades because of this one really, really, really stupid poll that was probably made by people trying to shame lesbian relationships. So like I need to look at the data before I can say anything about anything.
The zone of self-harm and suicide for a man is the year after he gets divorced, when he loses primary relationship. And what is the reason, the biggest cause for divorce amongst young people? It's financial strain. We need to put more money in their pockets. We need an education system that restores sort of bias or fixes the bias for women. And we basically need to level up all young people, which will disproportionately help young men.
Do you see anyone in the political sphere? I mean, we had Wes Moore on, governor of Maryland. He has talked about this publicly. He just tried to focus on young men, but you don't hear this conversation very often.
I'll tell you, Anderson, the conversation has become so much more productive. 5 years ago, when I started advocating for men, the immediate gag reflex, and I understand it, was, well, you're Andrew Tate with an MBA, and you got shamed. And when I went to the Democratic National Convention,
I really just think there's no way out without acknowledging the fact that, listen, okay, a lot of these young men aren't just victims. They're also massive fucking losers. A lot of them are probably watching this right now. And that's not like a permanent feature of their life. They can change. But I bet you a lot of these young men, even within their own peer group and age range and income range, there are girls in their class who are doing way more with their lives. And by doing way more with their lives, I don't mean like, oh, they got a scholarship or whatever. I mean, they're like going out and hanging out with people. They're going and exploring new areas. They're doing new things. They're looking for cool new things around the city to do. They have hobbies. Yeah, they're trying to develop interests. They're concerned about their style. I don't think it's cool that like 12-year-old girls are putting on makeup before class every morning. I think that's fucked up. But I also think it's probably not good that young girls or young women are expected to have some kind of understanding of presentation and style, which is a good thing, and young men don't. So like, girls will grow up having a sense of like poise, presentation. I'm not saying that this is always handled well. It's often handled really poorly, but I do think it's good to care about yourself and your presentation and stuff like that, you know. And a lot of guys don't. And then they're like, well, guys are just naturally ugly. No, guys aren't just naturally ugly. The girls you talk to thread their eyebrows and understand their own like sizes. You don't and don't. So like, what are you complaining about? You could be on par with them and you choose not to. They exercise, you don't. You know? Anyway, I don't know. Like, it's like a lot of these guys are fucking losers, and it's not. I don't hate them for it, right? Like, I would say that for a length of time in high school, I was a bit of a fucking loser myself. I think that's fine. Maybe everyone has a period of time where they're like that, but I think that like the sadness these people, the loneliness and sadness these people are experiencing, I think in a lot of cases has to be addressed through a process of radical self-improvement that we need to advocate for. And that's why I'm a straight shooter on this, you know? I don't want to lie to people. You should put effort into your life. You should put effort into everything. If you're doing something, if there's a thing that you have to do in your life, it could be something as innocuous and boring as chores, grocery shopping, whatever else. I think you should always strive to do it well. I'm not saying I'm perfect about this. I'm definitely not. But I think it's an admirable trait to give it all your best, you know? There's nothing cool about not putting in effort. You should try to make use of your time. The time you have is finite. And over time, you're going to have less of it. And you're going to look back on a life that's been poorly spent. You're not going to remember how you spent most of it. Without novelty for your memory to grip onto, your years and years of your life are going to blur together into this homogeneous gray mess of times you stayed inside and didn't do anything cool outside, you know? It's not good. It's not good. You can change it. You can always change it. You always have the ability to change it, okay? I've always said one of the best things that you can do to get your life on the right track, if you feel this sense of like you're trapped or you can't get out of this loop, or you feel like your life is just bleeding you by and you don't know how to change it, is to go outside on a walk without your phone or any other entertainment device, and just try to go for like a 20-minute walk around the neighborhood and just get the sun on your skin. I mean, ideally you'd do it during the daytime, right? Nighttime, it's a little more cold. You can't see as well, but I need my music though. No, you don't. You just don't. You don't. You don't. So touch grass? Yes, literally. And I think it's a little bit unfortunate that we have gotten so good at reflexively dismissing good advice, because the advice falls within the rhetorical categories of things that we've been taught to like reflexively dismiss, you know? Oh yeah, just touch grass. Yeah, actually, it's really good. And cleaning your room is really good. Doing a little bit of interior design to make your bedroom or your living room feel a little bit more personal and hospitable, it does feel good. The problem with the male living space epidemic is not that you haven't bought an expensive enough couch. The problem is that you are miserable. Guys love to pretend they're not. Guys love to be like, nah, dude, trust me, I've optimized my life. I actually only need these things. Beauty is unnecessary. I want to spend 12 hours a day playing video games. No, you don't, dog. You don't. Every moment of every day, you're fighting off impulses inside your body that are directing you to make better use of your life. I'm not saying there's anything wrong with playing video games for a while, but let's not like pretend that you're making good use of this time, okay? Our podcast's okay? If you are going on a walk, as I have described, no, don't bring your goddamn phone. No podcast. No, just walk around. No one be more bored. Learn how to be bored. Disconnect for a second. I'm not saying you have to like reduce your screen time broadly. I'm telling you the literal first step here. Like if you can't be alone with your thoughts, that's probably not good, you know? Not that I think it's really that boring to walk around without a phone. I mean, like, depending on what you've got going on in your neighborhood, you could find some good stuff to look at. It's not necessarily just about the walk or the boredom. It is good to get some sun on your skin. It is good to get a bit of light exercise. It is good to go out there and to, know your neighborhood a little bit. Yeah, that's fine. That's fine. But moreover than that, I think it's also about like the ability to, you have to show yourself that you're capable of overriding habit and instinct, You want to be comfortable. But you'll be comfortable enough when you're dead, man. One of these days you're going to be dead and you don't have to worry about doing scary things anymore, okay? There's a lot of cool stuff out there. What would you suggest to people who are seriously depressed? Same as what I just said, mostly. Look, I'm not a mental health expert, okay? I'm just talking about what I think is good for you, all right? You have to actualize your will. And discipline is freedom, okay? If you have the discipline to get the work that you need to do done, you free up more time in your life and in your head for the stuff that you want to do, okay? I bet a lot of you right now are like, your head's a-buzzing. You're half listening to the stream, but most of your attention is dedicated towards the, oh, if I just started my work right now, then I'd be done with it in 1 hour kind of feeling. And you're going to keep that feeling buzzing in your head until 11:07 p.m. tonight, You're going to have that like procrastination buzz in your head until like the very last second, so on. And it's not good for you, You have to get stuff done as it comes up, and then you have the ability to do what you want. You free yourself. Break those chains. Anyway, let's finish the damn video.
They talked about every special interest group on the planet except for the one that had fallen furthest fastest, young men. And the people who are leading this fight and made the conversation much more productive, very simple, mothers who see what's going on. And the dialogue goes something like this. I got 3 kids, 2 daughters, 1 son, 1 daughter at Penn, 1 daughter in PR, and my son is in the basement playing video games and vaping. Mothers see this. Governor Moore, Governor Newsom, a lot of senators are basically talking about, for the first time, they are coming out and saying there is a problem with our young men. Governor Moore has said he's going to devote the next year to the struggles facing young men and to boys. This has become a much more productive dialogue.
Yeah,
we just got to make them less of losers, The issue with the loneliness epidemic is that lonely young men would hear this advice and roll their eyes. It is true that, like, as a demographic group, I think that young women are a lot more susceptible to, I mean that in a good way, responsive to self-improvement advice, whereas men are so afraid of coming across as weak or not in control of themselves. So we're talking about young men who have no self-discipline at all, no ability to control their own behavior, but they get really offended at the idea that they are that type of person. So they pretend that they're in control which means that they have to justify and rationalize the shit life decisions they make. You know what I mean? Oh, no, 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 no. You don't understand, okay? I'm an Aristotelian warrior, right? I'm a philosopher king. I actually want to live like a fucking basement dweller. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Just accept the help, dog. In the face of what economic opportunity? I got news for you, buddy, okay? There are people in the favelas of Brazil that are living better lives than you, all right? There are very poor people out there who are getting mad pussy, all right? There are guys in Brazil making an equivalent of 6,000 USD a year, and they're getting bounced on right now, all right? And they have a rich social life. Sure, they struggle. I'm not saying it's great to be poor, but they do have a richer social life than you do. And the reason I'm responding to you the way that I am is because I want to keep the right problems in the right place. Young people don't have enough money. Relative to the rest of the economy, young people are very deprived. I acknowledge this. But this loser epidemic, the lack of money, the lack of social attenuation, right? Social competence, I think it's its own problem. After all, it's not as though young women are all rich, but they're not having the same loser problem young men are. They may be lonely, but this epidemic of like borderline hikikomori, weird incel Nazi so-and-so, this is a largely male phenomena. The loneliness is across the board. But of course the young women are lonely, right? The world is being built to make them lonely. It's not necessarily being built to make them like incel Nazi losers, right? Young men are the ones who are hopping on that train. So to that, you have to ask, well, why? And I think that's because the loserdom these guys experience makes them feel very insecure. It makes them very self-conscious. And I think it makes them susceptible to rhetoric where they can channel that feeling of self-hatred into social causes. Bad social causes. None of this is innate. None of this. None of this. I bet you door knockers from Mamdani aren't lonely. I bet you that too. Some of it is societal too. Oh, it's very societal. Absolutely. It's not an individual thing. It's not like a segmented issue or anything like that. Yeah, no, it's 100% societal. And it has to be addressed that way. You know, there is a reason why there are so many young male losers and relatively so few young female losers. A lot of young women are go-getters relative to young men, right? It's not great. Volunteering is very good for your mental health. I agree. Anyway, we finished the bit.